Dennis Prager is one of America's most consequential radio talk show hosts. He's been broadcasting on air in Los Angeles since 1982, where his show airs live Monday through Friday for 3 hours each weekday. Listeners, you've seen Dennis on Fox and Friends, Red Eye, Hardball, Hannity, the CBS Evening News. You've read his political and cultural analysis in National Review, the Jewish Journal, the Wall Street Journal, and his syndicated column that appears in papers across the country. Dennis Prager is one of the most prominent Jewish conservatives active today, and he's an American patriot. Over these past many years, he's grown concerned for the future of our country. Concerned over the state of our politics, yes, but concerned as well over the state of our culture and the moral life of the nation. Dennis believes that without a sure moral foundation, no democracy can long endure. So if you're worried about the moral foundations of a great democracy, what should you do? What is the strategy for moral recovery? Welcome to Kikar, Conversations in the Jewish Public Square, a podcast brought to you by the Jewish Leadership Conference. I'm your host, Jonathan Silver. Dennis Prager's answer to that question, what is the strategy for moral recovery, is simple. To teach the women and men of America the wisdom embedded in the most powerful moral textbook of the West, the Hebrew Bible. Dennis has just published his first volume of Torah commentary, this on the book of Exodus. I sat down with Dennis to discuss why it's so important for Americans to study Scripture, why he thinks both religious and non-religious people can profit from that study, and the power of this ancient Jewish text to enrich our modern national life. If you enjoy our podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, and while you're there, please leave us a review. If you'd like to learn more about our work at the Jewish Leadership Conference, you can visit our website, jewishleadershipconference.org, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Here now is my conversation with the president of PragerU, the host of the Dennis Prager Show, Dennis Prager. Dennis Prager, welcome to Kikar.
It's great to be with you. You're doing very important work.
So here's my first question. You've just launched this monumental series, The Rational Bible. What does rational mean? Why do you use that term?
My vehicle to God and religion has been reason. When God gave out mystical ability, I was not in line. I don't say this at all disparagingly. I almost envy people who have that aspect of religiosity, but I don't.
Because one of the central theses of the book, in your interpretation of Exodus, one of the truths that emerge is that a moral society without God is impossible to sustain.
That's correct.
So rational in this sense does not mean godless, quite the contrary.
No, there was a great book written by Louis Jacobs, conservative rabbi, conservative/Orthodox, in England about 50 years ago. The title changed my life. I didn't even read the whole book. It's the only time I could say a title changed my life. We Have Reason to Believe. That was the name, and it was a brilliant title because it had a double entendre, double meaning. We have reason to believe, meaning there are reasons for us to believe. But the secondary meaning was we have been given reason in order to believe. And that's what I believe. Reason is my vehicle to belief. And if you read the reviews on Amazon on the Rational Bible, you will see people saying, this never meant a thing to me, the Bible. One guy just wrote a very recent one. There are now over 200 reviews, and he wrote, I'm a Jew who doesn't believe in any of this. I am starting to believe because it's all made rational. And that's a challenge because there are things in the Torah that obviously challenge reason. If your child is a ben sorer umoreh, your child is a wild child, and you can't control him, and he curses you out, and whatever he does to you, you take him to the court, and if they find him guilty, they stone him. But I make the rational point that the Torah in that law was massively morally progressive. It took the right of parents to kill their children away for the first time in history. That's the genius of that law.
Transferring that right from the parents to the community.
Yes, and the community never did it. So in other words, it abolished it while keeping parental authority intact. It was a genius law.
Why did you start with the book of Exodus?
Because it has the 10 Commandments, and that's all the world needs to be a good place.
Well, you have readers all over the world, listeners all over the world. What do you think people should learn from the moral example, the political example of Moses? What does Moses have to teach us?
Moses is a wonderful man. Moses argues on behalf of the Israelites, even when they're disgusting, and, they hate him, and they hate Aaron, and they hate God. And in that sense, he's inspiring. But Moses would answer your question. There's nothing to be learned from me. The Torah is God-centered. God took the Jews out of Egypt, not Moses. That's why Moses is not mentioned in the Haggadah on Passover at the Seder. So the truth is, you see, for a Christian, the question, what do you learn from Jesus, is everything, because Jesus is perfect. So a Christian would have an answer. What do I learn from Jesus? I have Christian friends who wear a bracelet, WWJD. What would Jesus do? No Jew wears a bracelet, WWMD. What would Moses do? We ask a different question. What does God want me to do? Not what would Moses do?
And so what should we learn from the Jewish people's relationship with God as it emerges and changes over the course of Exodus?
What there is to learn is actually a more of a warning variety. For example, I show that ingratitude is the human norm. Think of what was done for the Jews, and that they immediately exhibit ingratitude to Moses and to God. It's astonishing, but that's the human condition. By the way, one of the biggest reasons I believe in the authenticity of the Torah, and that ultimately God is its author, is how negatively Jews are depicted. There is no other holy work on earth that depicts its own group so negatively as the Torah depicts the Jews. Men would not have made that up. If Jews wrote it and not ultimately come from God, they would have shown themselves in a much more favorable light.
Right.
And not to mention Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Rebekah, they're all flawed.
Well, let's turn to maybe the American moment, thinking about the problems, the most significant consequential problems that we have in our country now. What does Exodus have to say to those problems?
Well, the first is my belief that we don't have a future in America without God-based ethics. There's an American Trinity on every coin. I call it the American Trinity. I have a book on that called Still the Best Hope. And the American Trinity is liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. Not one founder thought we would survive the death of God, including Jefferson. Jefferson and Franklin, who were not believing Christians, but they were Bible lovers. They designed a great seal of the United States. Your listeners could see it on the internet. And it is the Jews leaving Egypt.
One of the sub-themes that you really do trace throughout the book is drawing attention to different founders' own reference to Exodus.
Yes, that's right. This is the only Judeo-Christian country ever founded. This was founded by Christians on the basis of the Torah. It's why the Liberty Bell has a quote from the Torah, not from the New Testament, not from the rest of the Old Testament. These were Torah-centered Christians who founded America, and Jews are doing their best to remove the Jewish origins of America.
Why is that?
Because we're very bright and very foolish. Jews were given brains, but without Torah, they have no wisdom. And by the way, I'm not an Orthodox Jew, so I'm not here to push for any denomination. I just want to make that clear. It's just the way it is. Jews have become fools as they have removed Judaism and Torah basis from their lives. It's very sad to me. It is. It's painful. It's an ongoing, enduring pain in me. To raise a generation of Jewish kids alienated from Israel, that took an effort. It doesn't just happen. That took an effort.
Speaking of ingratitude.
It's just to God and to Israel.
Well, one of the major themes of Exodus and one of the major themes of your commentary is the theme of freedom. That somehow Exodus seems to be inaugurating a new understanding of freedom in human history. And I wonder if you think that America recovering this Exodus vision of freedom would improve our society.
Yes, well, that's why I said the Franklin and Jefferson designed the Great Seal, and it was the Jews leaving Egypt. And what was their parallel? Americans leaving Europe. We were going to found something new and better and different, just as the Jews were going to found something new, better, and different in the Holy Land. This is to the founders of the United States, Jews don't know this. America is a second Israel, not a replacement. That's very important. This is not replacement theology, which is unacceptable morally, in my opinion. This is a belief there was the first Israel, and America will be the second Israel. And that's how it was founded. And that's Franklin and Jefferson, who, as I said, did not even believe in the Trinity. But they believed in God, and they believed in the greatness of the Bible.
It struck me, one of the most powerful, I think, when you take a step back and look at what happens to the Israelites as they're coming out of Egypt and approach Sinai, one of the most powerful offerings, gifts that the book of Exodus gives us in terms of thinking about freedom is that political freedom, the freedom of the law, only works if there's a prior condition of moral boundedness. Meaning if people are self-governing in the first place, then you can have political freedom.
That's correct.
But if you live in a culture of license, right, then even the best laws cannot take root.
That's right. That's exactly right. This country, though almost no kid is taught this, it was founded on the belief that freedom is based on God. You're either beholden to the state or to God. And the more you're beholden to the state, the less free you are. The more you're beholden to God, the less you're beholden to the state, and the more free you are. It was all logical. None of this has to do with faith. It's just logic. If I think that God is monitoring me, then the government doesn't have to monitor me. Look at Western Europe. As God becomes little, government becomes big. And that's what's happening in America.
One of the things that you do trace in the book is how the society that God envisions for Israel is in some ways a mirror opposite of the society that they're leaving in Egypt. That Egypt had certain practices that the Israelite society would invert in order to live in a better society.
That's right.
I wonder if you see in America today, as we have departed from our founding beliefs, any little pieces of Egypt in our society as you look around.
Well, pieces of Europe. I like the Franklin Jefferson parallel. Jews left Egypt, America left Europe. The left wants us to return to Europe because it's big government. They love it, and it's equality, or so they believe.
So in your view, does the Bible relate to conservatism in some clear way?
Of course it does. My values come from the Bible, from the Torah specifically. I try to explain it here, though the book is not at all political. But if you put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 and 2 together, you come to some conclusions. You know what I tell my liberal Jewish family members? I tell them, why don't you preach what you practice? They live such conservative lives, but they won't preach them.
This is really a case where the moral confidence of Jewish life, if we were able to just explain that, it's a Jewish gift that we can give the country.
Yes, exactly. That's what I want to do with this. This is, I believe the Torah is the greatest book ever written. This is a gift to the world, the Torah. And I always had an answer to those who said the Torah is for Jews. I said, really? Is Shakespeare for the English? Is Beethoven for Germans? And that ends that issue.
So for people who hear our conversation, get your book, and are provoked by it in some way, and want to explore the book of Exodus more deeply, where should they turn? What classic commentators, modern authors?
Well, the ideal, if this inspires, and it's meant to, as I say, and I mean this sincerely, if it doesn't change the reader's life, then I failed. That's how high a bar I've set for it. But the logical place, if you're asking specifically about a Jew or anybody?
Well, mostly Jews, but
okay.
But for anybody too.
So a Jew who is moved by this, because the book is bought by is by people of any or no faith, but if specifically in the Jewish context, I think the ideal place to go after this book is a class, at their synagogue or at their Chabad house. That's the ideal, because then it's a wonderful thing. You have all this background, and then you could bounce these ideas off other people also studying. There are a lot of fine books. Cassuto is awesome. He's professor of Bible at Hebrew University. He wrote on Exodus. There are a lot of modern commentaries. I use them all, and I cite them all, and I am grateful to them all.
Your recommendation, going from Jewish ideas to Jewish community, is in a way the essence of conservatism. Dennis Prager, thank you for joining us. This conversation was recorded on May 29th. Thank you for coming to Kikar.
John, thank you. Good luck.